It's been a mainstay of our activities, and indeed, it's very important to recognize that UNA-NCA is an institutional part of the national fabric, which Paul is going to tell you a little bit more about, of chapters across the country. More than 30% of our members are, in fact, young professionals. And fortunately, they're being replenished by their coming together with us year after year after year. And many of them stay on as members and in the Washington workplace, so that means they continue to be active members. Many of them, of course, go off to other workplaces, and that's what part of this evening is about, to make sure you're looking at all the options available to you. But we're just really delighted that you're here for this. This is a very special kind of career evening because it's focused on the UN agencies, and you're going to be interacting with representatives who are at work now for those UN agencies, some of whom are from the Washington offices of the UN and some aren't. But this is a real opportunity to get an in-depth look through these conversations at different and a wide range of UN agencies. We've in the past sometimes had programs that didn't just focus on UN agencies. In a minute I'll say something about the opportunity to cross-relate other kinds of organizations with the UN agencies. There's a rumor that it's difficult to participate in international affairs in the Washington area these days. And yes, there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of rhetoric. And there's a lot of anti-globalist talk that goes on. And there's some of it's been presented at the UN. Some of it's been presented in Washington at the White House. Some of it, lots of Congress people say that too. I just want to say that over the years, I've had the real opportunity to work in the international development and international affairs sphere for about 45 years. And over time, each administration is different and each administration settles out. And interestingly, the opportunities and the growth of international affairs, international development, including new agencies, both unilateral or multilateral as well as uniquely U.S., have grown and prospered. The budgets, while there's a lot of controversy about it, have remained about the same over the last 2 years and have grown dramatically in the years before that, even during periods where more conservative administrations weren't too keen about some of the issues. People learn on the job about how important it is that we're in a global society and that what is local seems local and focused on only local issues is in fact global issues at the same time. We're local and global and there's no going back. Sometimes we have to learn to work in that atmosphere in a comfortable way and across political divides. But I'm very optimistic that you are coming along in your careers at a point where the opportunities are only going to grow. It seems difficult the day you're looking for what that opportunity or transitioning. But over any period of time, it has been nothing but an optimistic projection, an opportunity for people with your talents. There are more people like me retiring from the early years of the start of much more international affairs and international development work. So I'm confident that the top jobs are opening up, which means that the process and opportunity for people to fill them moving up in your career ladder is very great, and maybe right now is greater than it's ever been before because of that transition from the huge influx of people who began their careers in the 50s and 60s on international development. So that's a big change. You can look forward to taking their places eventually, but in the meantime, it opens up the ranks for everybody. What I wanted to say about the crossover is that while you might focus tonight on UN agencies, and you may end up in a UN agency. Maybe you're switching agencies. I've met some people tonight who are already working for the UN agencies, but they want to figure out how they can work in other parts of the UN. Other ways, like in my case, when I was working as an NGO professional, an international NGO official, I had a lot of opportunity to work for the UN, not as an employee, not directly as a consultant, but as a partner. And in my lifetime, the partnership across business, nonprofit, commercial NGOs, non-commercial NGOs, and UN agencies and allied multilateral agencies has grown dramatically. It's probably the most significant change in international affairs business, if you will, opportunities, is the collaboration now across different kinds of agencies. And therefore, the range of interests you may have in working with the UN may turn out also to be realized by joining with those very institutions who are the trusted partners of UN agencies. And my experience is that then that tends to lead to flow of opportunities for employment between and among agencies because you're known as experts in both spheres. So think about that as you investigate UN opportunities, and also look at their allied partners as opportunities that can help you to realize that ultimate goal if that's it, or you find other ways in which you're very pleased and satisfied. Now, we're an organization, a nonprofit association, which focuses on ensuring that there's an improved engagement between the United States and the UN. And we have our job cut out for us. We are advocates for that well-being, and we're optimistic about that as well, both for the funding and the support, and we have lots of support from people across the aisle seeing international affairs as a place to invest. It's also, though, challenging, and we recognize that. It's particularly challenging right now on the human rights front. This is the year in which we're celebrating the 70th anniversary of the signing and development of the International Declaration of Human Rights. Eleanor Roosevelt helped to build it, helped to craft it. It's built on the U.S. model. But the number of atrocities and violence that's occurring against the rights of people across the world is growing. After 70 years, it's not shrinking, but it's growing. And we have a lot of work to do to ensure we're advocating for that. So I would ask you, as young members of our organization, as people with your careers and the work you're already doing, in addition to your work life, which may in some cases be for advocacy organizations, but the high priority for this year and a few years to come is participate also in the advocacy for the well-being of the human rights platform internationally. And I would just mention this runs from recognizing the challenges in Yemen, recognizing the challenges of the Rohingya people in Burma, recognizing the challenges for the whole area of displaced people in the Middle East, for the migrants who are seeking better opportunities in the U.S., and we need to find solutions that allow them to have better opportunity at home as well as in the U.S. And of course also some regimes that are pretty famous today in the newspaper as a result of violating human rights, the murder of a Washington Post reporter. That's an atrocity that I hope the world will speak to and stand up, because if we don't, it will undermine the platform for the rights of all those other undertakings. That's a big task, but I think that our association, with your help, will be able to make a difference. Our Director of Advocacy is also here tonight, Ellen, and she's going to say something else. But if you're interested in getting involved in our advocacy programs because you're passionate about that, we've got the place for you to come and join while you're also looking for new career opportunities. Finally, I want to just thank, Paula's going to thank other people who are supporting the program. I also, though, want to thank the two wonderful co-directors, Lenise Williams and Laura? Where's Laura Blyler? There you are. Okay. Both of them. They have, not single-handedly, with a great team, put this together. And I think you should thank them, and we're very proud of their work to bring us all together. I'm simply looking forward, after your dinners start, to watching around a little bit what you're doing. I'm looking forward, after my remarks and my colleagues' remarks, to hearing Kevin and his remarks about the ILO and his experience, which I think will be very exciting for you. And with that, I want to introduce Paula Boland, who is really the key leader here at the UNA-NCA as our executive director. Paula, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. You're very modest. You're also among our key leaders, and many more represented here tonight. Good evening, everyone. I'm Paula Boland, the Executive Director of UNA-NCA, and I want to welcome you all to the fall edition of a Young Professional Career Dinner Series. This is the signature program of our young professionals, as Steve said, led by Lenise Williams and Laura Blyler, and it's having a very special focus on UN agencies tonight. Our organization, as probably many of you know, is one of the largest and most active chapters in the family of UNA USA, with about 118 chapters in the country. So we're very proud of being a vibrant chapter that provides opportunities for education and engagement in our mission, which is to advocate for a strong US-UN partnership. So we have about 1,200 members, and we serve DC, Maryland, and Northern Virginia. The exciting news is that almost half of our membership is comprised by young professionals and students, folks like most of you here. And many of our young professionals are increasingly serving in leadership positions on our board of directors, on our advisory council. And Kim Weichel, our chair, is here. Thank you for coming, Kim. Or as chairs or active members of our program committees. And you heard we have Ellen here leading the advocacy committee. This makes me particularly proud because I started my journey in UNA with the young professionals. And it was really through this volunteer opportunity that I discovered my passion for international affairs and international development. And it was an opportunity that over time really had a significant impact and shift in my professional career path. I was practicing law, private sector, back in Argentina, came here for a master's degree in environmental law, and once I got involved with UNA, I really got involved in so many different issues that I felt passionate about and dive into the world of NGO management. So my message to you is that you never know what is out there for you, and you have to be open. And even if you have a particular career and interest, network, get exposed, get involved in organizations such as UNA. Mine and as many of our volunteer leaders here, we have really found wonderful ways to not only continue to learn about the issues that we care about, but we have a way to advocate for those issues, to grow as leaders, to expand our network. So if you are not yet a member, what are you waiting for? Join us. Join us. There are many opportunities for you to get engaged in the organization. And now more than ever, we really need to raise our voices for a strong US-UN partnership. And you can find that through the many volunteer opportunities that we have. So visit our website, get on board, UNA-NCA.org. I want to recognize our membership and programs managing director, Andrew Dahl. I think he's in the back. So if you have questions, would like to learn more about ways to get engaged, please talk to him. He, along with my managing director for global education, Nicole Bohannon, who manages a year-round program on Model UN, and Bonnie Wartzel, who works on advocacy and development. These are my team members. I want to thank them for all the hard work in preparation for tonight, as well as our program assistants. Thank you so much. And of course, the many volunteer leaders that we have present tonight. I don't have time to mention all of them, but really, we have a small operation base, and we wouldn't be able to do all the programs that we do if it weren't for your commitment and dedication. I do want to share with you the wonderful sponsors that we have for this evening's program, including, first and foremost, the United Nations Foundation, who is opening the doors for us tonight. And also past president, Ambassador Donald Bliss, our current president, Steve Mosley, Laura Blyler, past president Ed Elmendor, who's hosting a dinner at his home, Kristen Heck on our board of directors, Jordan Hibbs, who's here on our board as well, Karen Mulhauser, past president, hosting at her home, Dr. Iqbal Unus on our board of directors, and last but not least, Lenise Williams, co-chair of the Young Professionals. So thank you all of you for making this possible. Last week, we kick off what we call UN Month with a celebration of Eleanor Roosevelt's birthday. And this was over a happy hour, but we were honored to have Congresswoman Eleanor Norton Holmes with us. And tonight we're here focusing on careers with UN agencies. And a week from Monday, October 29th, we are going to have a special UN Day event with the executive director for the Children's Fund, known as UNICEF. Henrietta Ford is going to be our featured speaker, and we're going to have this lovely event at the Embassy of Italy. So all the details are going to be available on our website, again, UNA-NCA.org, on Monday, and invitations will be issued then. So look out for us. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Kevin Cassidy, who has over 33 years of international development experience and is currently the director and representative to the Bretton Woods and multilateral organizations for the ILO, International Labor Organization. Kevin served in many different positions throughout his career at the ILO. Prior to his current appointment, he was Senior Communications and Economic and Social Affairs Officer, responsible primarily for fostering partnerships in North America. And before his appointment in New York, he was Chief Technical Advisor for the Global Campaign on Promoting Fundamental Rights at Work at ILO. And prior to his ILO journey, he worked for the Aga Khan Foundation in London. And before that, with several other UN agencies. We have a very detailed bio for our speaker in your program booklet. And without further ado, Kevin.
Thank you very much. It sounds like another person should be up here than I, but I feel like I just started the other day. I want to thank the UN Foundation and, of course, the UNA-NCA, who we are already working with on a project here for the global classroom. I think earlier when the gentleman was talking about older officials leaving the UN, I thought, okay, maybe this is my retirement party. I wasn't sure if there was a hidden message there, but maybe he has a better connection with my Director General than I. Question to you, why do you want to work at the UN? Why do you want to work at the UN? Oh, don't avoid the finger. You can't avoid.
I feel like definitely I want to have a job right now. Because we are definitely getting cooked. But also there's a need right now because we're fighting student labor. So definitely.
Fantastic. You?
I guess because finding purpose is the environment and maybe a way that we can progress more without everyone losing.
Excellent. And one last person, you. Yes, you, of course.
I think it's very important. Human rights advocacy is very important, especially in the current political climate. It's important to not forget that people's lives are at stake.
Yeah. Thanks very much. I didn't mean to turn this into your keynote speech, but I think it's great that we can be able to talk about it. This is more than a job. I mean, we all spend more time at our jobs than we do with our families. That's the nature of work. That's why we're trying to help create decent work so that you can get some good time off. But really, there are people who are counting on you. I mean, that's the most important thing I've learned in 34 years. June 9th, 1984, I walked into the DC-1 building after knocking on the gate of the UN. I filled out my P11 application. I thought I had everything that the UN wanted. I had Chinese language. I was programming in Cobalt and Fortran. Silence was the stern reply. And I thought that I would be a wonderful candidate for the UN. And then when I turned to the secretary after handing it in, and I apologize, that word sometimes is used negatively, but the lady who received my application said, so what can I do for you? I said, should I call you Monday? She said, when she stopped laughing, she said, we'll never call you. You know, we get 1,500 of these a day. And she was being very realistic about it, and I was very sad. And I think she picked up on that, said, well, maybe what you can do is ask for an internship. And 9 hours later, I talked myself into one, and I haven't left the UN except for a small stint at a foundation. People not only need you and count on you, it's that everybody in this room can contribute, no matter what your area of expertise is. Public administration, communications, it could be IT related, it could be legalistic, it could be conciliation, mediation and conflict resolutions. There are so many different areas that the UN needs support with. And there's also many entry points to the UN. I've had the fortune, and for me it was a singular vision to work at the UN. I grew up in a very small town, Brooklyn, New York, and decided that the UN, instead of just looming large over the East River, was the place I wanted to explore. It was a place of excitement, you know, and especially around the UNGA time. And I think even more now, if you can even get down the street during that period of time of President's Week. But I was so impressed and so happy that I could work at a place that was doing more than just earning me a paycheck. In the beginning, I didn't make much money. We were all interns. We know how that goes, although a plug for the ILO, we do pay for interns. But I've worked in UNDP, I've worked in DPI, I've worked in the Secretary General's office, both Boutros Ghali and Ban Ki-moon. I've worked in OCHA and DPKO on developing field-based geographic information systems on landmines so that returning populations would not get injured. I remember being in a small village with these very cheerful young kids who were maimed and scarred from landmines, but the happiness that they had knowing that their younger brothers and sisters were not going to suffer the same fate because the UN was there. Now, sometimes that becomes a little bit of a pressure on you because we have to succeed. We have to do our best. Human rights is something we should all believe in. So whether you go to a corporate career, you work in academia, you work in the government, and I would just suggest everybody to try all avenues that speak to your skill sets and your interests. You can contribute. Human rights is about the belief that we have in humankind. The UN is an experiment in humankind, in the humanity, about how we protect people around the world with our ideas. We protect people with our systems, our institutions, our way of life. I think this is really important. That may be under attack. I think that's a waning phenomenon. I think that we will succeed. We must succeed. I think this is what we've learned over the last many years. I think the best thing about my experience in working with the UN is the fact that people are passionate about what they do. I mean, as I said, worked a number of agencies, and 34 years ago, when I started, when I was minus 10 years old, I had an opportunity at our International Labor Conference at a few hours, right, because you always fill your time with something. And I was interviewing some of our experts, somebody on migration, somebody on social protection, people talking about international labor standards, really riveting stuff, you know, I mean, but it is actually, if you're into that. And what I saw in one person, and this will always stay with me, Philippe, he was looking at our conditions of work, and he was a very sort of cautious and a very deliberate man, a lawyer. And when we started speaking about it, I can see him starting to rock back and forth in his chair and starting to gesticulate with his hands and talking with such passion about the work that he does, about the conditions of work in factories, in informal economies, in rural areas. And I thought, this is amazing. I mean, I get to work with somebody who has spent their whole life thinking about how to make people's lives better. I mean, this is an amazing thing. We can churn out products, we can do services and so, but I think at the end of the day, the most important service is serving each other. It's making better societies and better communities for us. Insights, right? I mean, the first thing is we need to get a job. UN is a great way, not the only way. I think the best thing I can recommend to you is go out to the field, get some experience, right? You can apply for jobs. There's lots of technical cooperation work. Doesn't have to be through the UN, could be big NGOs, could be other corporate foundations, and so get that experience out there. Really see if it's your passion. See if that's what you want to do. Some people are better communicators, some people are better researchers, other people are very good on their own in doing finance. You know, we need all of this. I'll tell you that I would just say that for you, there's a couple of things I would say to do, and then I'll give you an experience that will hopefully illustrate why I'm so passionate about my work. First of all is read. Always, always read. Stay up to date. Be current on these issues. They're changing dramatically. The whole Sustainable Development Goal is really a fundamental shift in the way the development paradigm has been viewed over the last 50, 60, 70 years. I mean, we are getting to a point where we need people with really high-end skills, so you have to be competitive. You have to go out there and understand what you're talking about and really be able to make the case. So communication's absolutely important. Learn, constantly learning. It's to the part of reading. If you have an opportunity to go for training classes, do that. Learn from other people, talk to people. And one of the best things, and I was going to save this for last, but my challenge to you is mentor somebody else to learn yourself. I think the best thing you can do is help somebody else understand their passion in this. So if somebody in this room, you see somebody else, talk to them about where they want to be. And then maybe that will help you understand a bit better about where you want to be. You have to challenge yourself in your work. You have to go out of your comfort zone. You have to take on work that you didn't think was your job. I am known as the Swiss Army knife of the ILO. I'm brought in to do communications work. I do graphic design. I do database development. I write speeches. I deliver speeches. I've worked on policy issues. I go to the field. I work on technical cooperation. I negotiate with the government agencies here, the Department of Labor, Department of State, USAID, and try to communicate our message. I'm challenging myself all the time. I'll tell you a small, quick story. When I was working in peacekeeping operations, I would always come in with a nice shirt and a nice pair of pants, but never a jacket and a tie. My hair used to be longer. I used to have a little more up here. But my colleague and my boss at the time, Tori Shedsmo, had said, you know, there are different tribes, and different tribes wear different uniforms. Some wear painter's pants, some wear swim trunks. Our tribe, we wear suits. You come dressed for work. Now, that means a lot in a corporate environment. That means a lot at a headquarters. So if you're looking at the UN in terms of New York or Vienna or Rome or even Geneva, that makes all the difference. You playing the part, you act the part, you look the part, you are the part for that. Out in the field, maybe less so. I remember going to northern Iraq, going into a minefield, wearing the very same suit like this, and I thought maybe I took it a bit too far. I think the last thing is to be fearless. I think that's the toughest thing of all. I mean, you're challenging yourself, but to be fearless. I was in two major situations which really kind of challenged my thoughts about what I want to do. I mentioned about northern Iraq, and some of the faces that I see here I've already told the story to, so please don't give away my punchline. I walked into a minefield following somebody from the Mine Action Group who was videotaping the field. Very well demarcated with the signs, you know, danger, don't walk here. What did I do? I followed him and I walked into that minefield. And out of the next 45 minutes, when I was frozen solid and didn't know what to do and worried about what my family would say if I came back to them other than in one piece, I realized that you have to be committed to do this work if you're really going to go out there. So the field sometimes can be very dangerous. I was also in Banda Aceh just after the tsunami struck. And that was probably one of the most horrific experiences I ever had been a part of. Seeing, you know, mass graves and seeing people just trying to get on with their life. I mean, how do you get on with your life after you've lost everything? I mean, people count on us. People need us, not only in emergency phase of shelter and medicine and food, but they need to remonetize their economy. They need to get back to work. They need to build their society once again. This is their country. This is their land. This is their society. They need to build it. We can come in. We can help. We can provide our support, our knowledge, our compassion, our empathy for them. But we're there to help, and I think for me that was one of the most eye-opening experiences, and I realized after that that I'm committed. So after having that field experience, what did they do? They put me in headquarters. So I don't know what the message is there, but certainly go out there and have those experiences for yourself. And I think just the last to leave you with an idea, and then we can open up to Q&A if we have some more time. I would say that, and again, those who were at the UNIC office the other day, please don't give away my punchline here. I do a 1, 3, 5, 7-year reflection for myself. If I have the opportunity, I'll go to the mountains or I'll go into the forest, someplace I can be with my thoughts. And I think a bit about, you know, what is it that I want to be when I grow up? Right? I'm still young. I'm only, you know, plus 20. Yeah. And I look at it 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 7 year out, right? Where do I want to be in a year? What do I have to do in year 1 or year 3 in order to get to year 5? What is it that I want to be? I look at the different job applications. I mean, now my path becomes narrower and narrower. So yours is wide open. Please explore that full extent of that. But who do you want to be? How do you want to reflect upon your life? And I think that's something that we all have to do with ourselves. So I think with that, I'll close here, and I want to thank you very much for your time and attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. It was very remarkable listening to you this afternoon. I have a question about the collaboration that all of us need to reach, especially if we go to work in the international development field. UN Secretary General Gutierrez mentioned that collaboration is the most pressing problem of our times during the United Nations General Assembly. How have you leveraged those collaborations between private sector, government, civil society, and academia, especially to advance multilateral agendas such as the Sustainable Development Goals? Thank you.
I'm glad we started with an easy question. Okay, so I think in terms of that, I mean, I'll talk about it from an ILO perspective. I mean, until the beginning of this year, I was very comfortable up in New York, sitting in my office on the Dag Hammarskjöld building, going to the Third Committee and negotiating policy with member states. They've yanked me away and put me in a foreign land down here. I hope we can operate a bit better and collaborate. But when I was in New York, one of the important things was that we realized that we can't do it on our own. We need to coordinate. We need to collaborate. How are we going to eradicate poverty? It is not just about giving people food or giving them social protection measures that they overcome some of the economic downside they have. They need to have jobs to get on with it. Children need to have access to education. Women need the opportunity to join the workforce if, in fact, that they can. We need to ensure that we're working for the community in a holistic fashion. So we work with, for example, in eliminating child labor. Eliminating child labor is not just taking the children out of the field, but is providing opportunities for the parents, the older siblings, and the children themselves. The schools have to be built. Classes have to be taught. UNICEF has an entry point there. Many other NGOs have entry points there. We have to provide opportunities for the older siblings of the children themselves. They may need training, apprenticeship skills. They may need internships, right? Providing that opportunity for their parents as well. What are the social protection measures that are in place? Governments have to change legislation. We're a normative agency. We help them rewrite that legislation. Working with UNDP, doing massive investment in employment creation or infrastructure development. World Bank has a portfolio that is lending to the country, negotiating with them about what their portfolios are and where do we add value to that. So we would like to think it's working perfectly. It's not, because all the agencies, the 34 agencies, funds, and programs, are individual institutions. We are now being forced to really take a hard look at ourselves. We do that through global supply chains. We try to eliminate child labor and forced labor, but you have occupational safety and health. You will have enterprise development. How do you integrate into the global supply chain? How are we looking at the regulations and laws there? How are the conditions of work in those factories? Are they up to speed in there? Are there labor inspectors trained for that? So internally, we do a lot of that holistic approach now, and I think the SDGs give us an opportunity. And to give another pitch, you know, if you have a good job, you can get yourself and your family out of poverty. If you have a good job, you can put food on the table. If you have a good job, you can have an education. If you have a good job, it can empower the women in the family or the young girls who go to school and have opportunities for themselves. So the SDGs are an amazing, I think, vision for the future. And I think the most important thing about that was the collaborative and participatory approach that put it together. And it's only going to succeed if that collaborative and participatory approach is followed through.
Hi, I'm Krista. I'm an undergrad at George Mason. One of the things that I'm studying and what I've done fieldwork on is how health education links to greater national security and environmental security. So my question for you is, how do you communicate to local communities on more of a grassroots level, and how do you get the UN messages through to them?
Can I just yell? No, sorry. Yeah. You know, I mean, communications is so important. I mean, and I'm going to give you a quick challenge. What are the first three international organizations?
Oh, the first three?
Yep.
United Nations.
No? ILO? Perfect, perfect. Okay, next. ILO, yeah. First three organizations in the international sphere, so to speak. Two of them were sectoral. Universal Postal Union and the ITU. International Telegraph Union, right? About communications. How do we set up postal rates? Communicate with one another. How do we use technology to communicate over long distances? ITU. How do you communicate in the world of work with social and economic come together? ILO. Dialogue, communication is absolutely essential to all of that. Sometimes we focus on a programmatic level. I think only recently have the big institutions, and certainly the ILO, been able to communicate it on a more stakeholder basis, right? And I think the problem that we've faced in the past is that we're not very good at talking about our agencies. I mean, I don't want to call anybody out, but I don't see anybody that I know personally from any UN agency, otherwise you'd be in a lot of trouble. Oh, you're going to, oh, hey, there you go. What's your elevator pitch for who you, yes. What is your elevator pitch in 3 seconds or less?
I work for development before, during, and after crisis.
There you go. A seasoned professional. A seasoned professional.
We have Barbara back there with UN Environment. We care for the planet and we care for people.
All right. So, and I think what that shows is that you have to have a message that is compelling, that can come across very easily, because otherwise when we speak in development jargon, we lose people. I think the most important thing is that we have to go to people where they are intellectually, physically, emotionally, wherever it might be, right? For the ILO, we're still working on that because we're more of a technical agency. I've got some formulations, and so, you know, we have been developing the rules of the road in the world of work for the last 100 years. You can thank the ILO for the weekend. That's actually true. We set the hours of work at 40 hours. So that's our first convention. So we didn't want to go into that. But the idea is that in order to communicate to people, you have to understand what that audience wants. It's a communication sort of audit, right? You're saying, who is our audience? What do we want to say? And how do we say it to them? Right? There are researchers. We give them tons of material. And we've got kind of stuck at that, at 300-page reports. But I think you can take a 300-page report and distill it down into 5 bullet points. Then you're doing a really good job at communicating your work. So I think we need to do better at that. We need to reach out to the sort of non-UN agencies, the stakeholders, the civil society, researchers, opinion formers, influencers, anybody that you can talk to about it. That's why I say you should be mentoring others. The more that they know about the things that you do and what they do, you can help one another understand a bit larger about the development sphere. So we've got a long way to go, but I think we'll get there.
So thank you very much. My name is Nathan Feldman, and even though my undergraduate was in web development, I'm coming back to the University of Maryland for a Master's of Public Policy because in my spare time I've done a lot of advocacy for Palestinian refugees. So my question for you is, you call yourself the Swiss Army knife of the United Nations and said that you've done a lot of, had a place in a lot of different roles. So throughout all of these different roles, what are you passionate about, and how do you maintain the fight for what you're passionate about despite whatever role you get assigned to?
Good. Well, it's a good thing it's an easy crowd here. Look, I think the thing that I'm most passionate about, and I think some people had echoed it here earlier, and it was said in earlier speeches, about human rights. I think for me, if you don't have a rights-based approach to the work you're doing, what's the point, right? You know, we can sell and buy goods, we can make goods. You know, I always hate those. I always hate those surveys that say that young people today, 70% hate their jobs. I mean, what a waste of time that is, right? I mean, let's do the things we love. Let's focus on the stuff that we love. So I'm somebody who is passionate about human rights. I've had the pleasure of working with, for example, Mary Robinson, the former president of Ireland and the former High Commissioner for Human Rights. She had actually told me that when Eleanor Roosevelt was developing with the team the UDHR, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, they actually used the ILO's constitution as the primary document. It is, and I challenge academics to look at it, it's the first international document that has given individual rights. It is the human rights progenitor for that. So working in the UN in New York, negotiating language with member states, extremely frustrating, but extremely rewarding when you get the issues across. I think now the way that I can continue doing that next year, and here we go with another plug, ILO turns 100 next year. We're going to be doing tons of events, working with think tanks, working with academic institutions, working hopefully with the UNAs around the United States. We are developing, I should say, we are updating the international, the model ILO simulation guide. Because, you know, before there was a model UN, there was a model ILO, right? The ILO was created in Section 13 of the Treaty of Versailles alongside the League of Nations. We were co-institutions. So the ILO was the only international organization that existed for such a period of time. So we have a great deal of passion about the structure of the work we do. It is rights-based. And I wear my little pin here about social justice and decent work. Our job is to help ensure, and again, homework assignment to everybody here. Go home and read the first line of the preamble to the Charter, the Constitution of the ILO. Peace and security can only take hold if it is based upon social justice. Very important concept. The rest of it is poetry. You look at treaties today, they're very technical. So, but the ILO's constitution is about the rights-based approach. It talks about providing protection for people at work. Not protecting their jobs, but protecting people. And I think that's a really important thing. So when I can work with institutions and academics and like-minded people like yourselves, and please call me or write me, Cassidy@ilo.org. Happy to work with any schools and to really get the message out there, because I think now we're at an inflection point, and we need to make sure that we make that right turn, the turn in the right direction for human rights.
We have time for one more question. Yeah, one more question?
Thank you. My name is Hannah Montgomery. I'm a dual degree law and master's student at American University. I was wondering if you could give some advice for young professionals who are very interested in international labor law, specifically What advice do you have on where to start? If not the ILO, what should we be doing?
Thank you. So, I mean, there are very few international organizations that deal with labor laws. So the ILO is certainly one of your primary picks. Make sure you're taking courses in comparative law. You know, U.S. law is not the only law in the world. Actually, you know, the South African Constitution and a lot of its rulings are actually being used internationally. And that's the same for many other countries. So there's a lot that we need to learn about the world around us. So the more that you have a sort of a sense of that comparative law, the better positioned you are. Of course, languages. You know, sometimes in the States we're not really pushed to speak a second language until we're in high school, and then by then I think it's sometimes a bit too late. So make sure that you have one of the languages, official language of the UN: English, French, and Spanish, Arabic, Russian, Chinese. Take a non-Romance language as well too. I think that may help. So if you speak French, try Chinese, maybe try Russian or so. And I think you know, do an internship. The ILO, we set it a little bit higher in the sense that our interns normally have master's degrees, either in master's programs or have just gotten out of the master's program itself. But you can actually apply international law through NGOs. There are a number of those civil society organizations here in Washington, but also beyond, who deal with international labor law. Fair Labor Association, International Labor Rights Forum, you have Human Rights Watch. I mean, there's many organizations out there, very valuable ones. UN agencies, UNIC, UN Foundation, UNA, you can communicate. Depends on how you want to influence the debate. You can work in the State Department, and you can then be working on the 3rd Committee or the 2nd Committee of the General Assembly in New York, and then you're contributing to that. So it depends on really, you know, where you find yourself, but there are different entry points that you can look at. And now what I'm looking at, and I'll just give my little insight of what I'm working on now with business. The ILO is a tripartite organization. We not only work with governments, we work with businesses and with workers' organizations on the ground. And I was sitting down with somebody from a very big company, and they said, you know, we agree with 85% of the standard-setting process on violence and harassment at work. This is a standard that we're developing, which should be adopted by June of next year on our centenary conference. And they said, you know, we agree with 85% of that, but there's no way we're going those extra 15%, right? So when I spoke to them about what their concerns were, and I won't raise them here, I was a bit surprised by what they had objections to, but nonetheless, if they are willing to get to 85% of what we're looking for to eliminate violence and harassment at work, which has implications for productivity, for staff turnovers, for absentee rates, and for an individual as well too, in total, you know, the denial of that person's rights, I thought to myself, let me engage this person. Let me work with them. Let's get 85% out of that company and their reach, their global supply chain, how they're going to be impacting not only here in the States, but all the countries where they have operations. If I can get that incrementalism, and this is a big jump, I'm happy to get 85%. And then once it becomes standard practice, it becomes a norm. Once it becomes a norm, they're more willing to be able to accept a little bit more of pushing out of the envelope. So I don't think that we should just go for all or nothing. At the ILO, you either ratify a convention or you don't. You don't accede to it, you don't subscribe to it, you ratify it, which creates an obligation on you to create national legislation. So I think the most important thing is that if we can get people to start viewing these issues from a normative perspective, we are able to then move the agenda further forward. So you've got a great deal of work ahead of you, and you know, it's many different opportunities. But look at the ILO's website. We do have internships in Geneva, all around the world. And they are paid internships, not just here in Washington. We're a very small office. I encourage you, and sorry for my UN colleagues, I'll do the pitch on the ILO. But again, it's been great to be here, and thank you so much, and I hope this has been useful to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much, Kevin. So I'm just going to quickly introduce Ellen McGovern. We're going to take some of these ideas into action. Ellen is our Vice President of Advocacy. She has a few words to get some action items your way, and then we'll close out.
Thank you, Laura. Well, first of all, I just want to say we are thrilled to see so many of these young professionals. Here. Put it here. Okay, great. Thank you. It's fabulous. Unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity at FALA with being one of you, but I started way back with Nicole Bohannon's, Model UN. So back in the Midwest, I was a kid. Back there, is it turned on? Okay, all right, gosh. Okay, so I started out with the Model UN back in the Midwest. I got so excited with that, it transformed my life. I did many other things, but the international was always my passion. I did international development in Venezuela, nonprofit. I did Peace Corps India. I then went on to do legislation here with the women's organization during the 70s, during tremendous change. And then with healthcare, with HHS. I did refugee resettlement. So, hey, folks, as they were saying, don't take one path. There are many paths for you. Keep thinking, what do I want to do when I grow up? We're all sort of thinking about that. Anyway, I'm so excited to be here. I'm the new Vice President of Advocacy, only been around, at least in this job, for a few months, but we are taking off. We are transforming this organization. They were on their way, but we're really on our way. We have a tremendous committee. It is intergenerational, and we love that, folks. We love the intergenerational aspect. We've got some new, we've got some mature folks. So we want to build and strengthen, expand that committee. We work with all the programs, a part of UNA-NCA. We like to do liaison, have a member from those various committees to work with us. So we're ready to go. We're looking for Virginia to transform a lot of our world. So the first thing we're going to do is head up to the Hill and educate or inform our new members. But I think we're going to have a lot of good ones. The hope is there. And then we're going to work with Maryland and D.C. But that is only one part of advocacy. We are really going to incorporate social media, digital advocacy. I think we can get a lot more of you engaged on all the issues of the day, because I know you can't always join us on the Hill. You're worker bees. You got a lot going on. You're traveling. You're doing a lot of things. But we still want you with us, really. And I know a lot of you aren't members yet, but we do have a student membership that you need to explore with a lot of us tonight or later, or once you're in your careers, remember the United Nations. So another thing, right now on Capitol Hill, on the House side, we have a human rights resolution that is in the works. Congressman Lowenthal from California is working with the Better World Campaign and UNA-USA. Micah Spangler, we're working with him. I'm looking at the Senate side with Coons and Van Hollen. We're going to get started with the Senate side after we really capture a lot of sponsors, co-sponsors of the resolution. So we're good to go with that. So just two more things, and then you can get off to dinner. One, the vote. I know you're all registered, huh? You got your absentees. If you need it, get going. Early voting is starting, well, in Maryland, the 25th of October, ends on November 1. But you more than ever have a responsibility, folks. All of us do. It's a part of your citizenship, isn't it? And now more than ever. And nobody ever has an excuse, ever, ever. Let me tell you, my mother-in-law lived to be 97. She got the vote in the 20s, and she went to her death voting every year. So no excuses. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to do a big action. So do you all have your phones? Normally we don't want you to look at the screen, but we do now. And we want you to look to that screen because we're going to have a text action. Oh, on both of them? Great. We're really going to be reaching out to your congressional reps and asking for full funding of the UN. We still don't have the final appropriation. We need full funding. So you can see we're with your phone. You enter that text. Can you all see it?
Text the words USA for UN to 738674.
Right.
And there's a petition. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, and there's a petition. It'll go to UNA USA, and it should flip you an email, a form, where you will enter your information, and there is a message. You can personalize it. It's always nice to modify it a little bit so it really seems yours. And then send it off. Andrew, Laura, is that? Yep. Okay, I guess I need to do it. Great. Thank you very much. And we've got a tremendous staff. If you haven't met them all, Andrew Dahl in the back, there he is, and Bonnie Worstel, she's now our first time ever part-time staff with the advocacy area, and we've got fabulous interns that are working with us. So come join us and have fun tonight. Explore the UN. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ellen. Okay. Thank you, Ellen. Oh, so we're just about to wrap up.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lanice Williams. I serve as the chair for the Young Professionals Program with UNA-NCA, and we just want to thank you all for coming out tonight. You could be anywhere on this Saturday night, but you decided to spend this time with us to talk about important UN issues, but also looking at your career interests and how that might intersect with the UN.
And I'm Laura Bleiler. I'm the Vice President for Young Professionals on the board. We got to thank our volunteers who are here, T, Jen, Robert, Cole, Taylor, and Grace, and all of our sponsors. And just we want to put out a call that we are all volunteers. We all work full-time jobs or we're in school. We're looking for people to help to plan programs like this or other new ideas we have coming up, some new professional development series. So if you want to get in touch, if you want to help out, we're going to be sending an email on Monday with a link to a survey. You can respond to that email, and we'll get in touch. Also, we really appreciate your feedback. Because of feedback from previous events, we're hosting this theme tonight, only going in depth with UN agencies. In the past, we usually have one topic about UN agencies, but because people wanted more, we decided to try something new. So we appreciate all of your feedback, and thank you for that. And with that, we're going to dismiss first the two dinners that are going off-site. So that is the International Financial Institution dinner and the UN Women dinner. So if you're going to international financial institutions, please meet in the front at the registration where you checked in. And then we'll get them on the road, and then we'll head UN Women following. So those will be in the front. And we'll then also be dismissing those of you who are here. You'll be able to grab another drink, just like chat for a little bit, and then we'll dismiss you to get your food, which is back here, and we'll be doing that first by anyone who has any dietary restrictions. So stay tuned. Thank you so much. If you're going to International Financial and UN Women, go out there. Have fun.